Hello and welcome to the Real World Podcast, episode 28. My name is Cameron. I'm your host. I'm joined by Bert again, joining us. How you doing, man?
Hey, pretty good. It's been a little while.
It has. Good to have you back. Today on this episode, we're talking all about Steven Spielberg, one of the most popular directors of all time. His new movie, The Fabelmans, is in theaters right now in limited release. So we wanted to break down our top 5 favorite films by Spielberg. So we're going to be doing that later in the podcast. We're also going to break down some movie news that dropped this week. So join us. We're about to get started. Be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and hit the bell so you get notifications of all our videos here at The Real World. Let's jump right in. All right, thank you so much for joining us on The Real World Podcast. We wanted to kick this episode off, as we usually do, with some movie news. A couple of big things dropped. The biggest thing for me, anyone who's followed the podcast or who can see my shirt knows I'm a huge Indiana Jones fan, and they announced some information via Empire Magazine. They have a full cover story coming out this week, which is all about the 5th Indiana Jones movie, which has been confirmed as also being the last Indiana Jones movie starring Harrison Ford. So just wanted to break down some of the info that I got that they released online, at least. The actual article and magazine doesn't drop until later this week. But
And I think I saw a picture of him. Is that possible?
yeah, they released the first
Yeah.
image. So we got the
Yeah.
first image of Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones in this new
Yeah.
movie, which is still untitled. They haven't revealed the title
Oh,
yet. But yeah, we got our first image of him. It looks like he's maybe on a boat. There's some water behind him and like a sunset. He's also on the cover of the magazine, which is not actually an image from the film. They also released some concept art, which is Indy standing in the middle of New York City with some kind of big
hmm.
light going off in the middle of the city, or some kind of explosion or something. So that was interesting too. A couple other images that got released were of Mads Mikkelsen, who is confirmed as the villain. He is a
Hmm.
villain named Voller, who is a Nazi. So Nazis are back in this one. Mads Mikkelsen, great actor, I'm a big fan of, so I'm excited to see what he does with that role. Another actor joining, Boyd Holbrook, who some people might know from Logan. He was the villain
Oh,
in that. He had the robot hand. He's been in a couple other films. I think he was in The Predator. He's actually the kind of like right-hand man of Mads Mikkelsen's character,
oh,
another
okay.
villain, another kind
Yeah.
of Nazi character. So those two were revealed, images of them, and we got our setting. So our setting is primarily New York City, as I mentioned from that concept art, and it's in the year 1969. So
Yeah.
they
So tell me
are,
how that works with the Nazis. Do you know how
yeah,
that's
my guess would be that, there is historical evidence that suggests Nazis did go to South America to kind of hide out
okay?
till things blew over. And so
Hmm.
my guess is, and actually there is some info in the article now that I'm remembering, which says 69, that's the space race, right? That's Apollo
Yeah.
11, that's
Yeah.
that whole thing. So that's kind of the backdrop of this story. And the Nazis were actually involved, these ex-Nazis were involved in helping NASA develop this technology, these kind of
Ah,
Nazi
wonderful.
German scientists, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of, I think, how it's going to end up playing in.
Okay.
And maybe some of those Nazis are actually still Nazis, basically,
Yeah.
is kind of the whole idea that I think they're going to go with.
Okay.
And obviously, they'll be going after some kind of MacGuffin. Indy's going to
Right.
go after
Right.
something, the Nazis will be going after it. And so we'll have that whole thing going on. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm really, really interested. I think it's poised to be a very compelling story. Harrison Ford himself was quoted as saying he wanted to do one last story that was the actual end of the character.
Hmm.
So most people are expecting him to probably die at the end by the end of the movie. Maybe not, we don't know. But he said
Yeah.
he definitely wanted this to be kind of the sunset of the character, basically.
Hopefully some
So
redemption from the last film because that was my least favorite out of all of them. I mean, it's
yeah,
not terrible, but
right.
you know what I mean.
I agree. I agree.
Everybody
I don't
kind of
think,
yeah.
yeah, I don't think it's as terrible. Some people think it's really bad. I really don't think
No,
it's
I
that
wasn't
bad,
terrible.
but I just think, yeah, it doesn't quite hold up with the other ones. And
Right. Right.
so, yeah, I think this is going to be a return to form. Although we don't have Spielberg at the helm here. He decided to
Oh,
just back up
oh,
and be a producer on it. There were
Okay.
several other films he wanted to make, and James Mangold stepped in,
Oh,
who did
right.
Logan, who did,
Yeah.
Walk the Line, Ford versus Ferrari, a lot of great films. He's one of my favorite
Yeah. Yeah.
filmmakers, and I think he was the perfect choice, if for nothing else, just because of what he did with Logan and
Hmm.
bringing that character to a satisfying end.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
hope and think he will be able to do the same thing here.
Right.
So
Yeah. Let's see what he does with, big budget action, but
yeah,
I'm sure he'll pull it off.
I think so too. Yeah, I'm really
Yeah.
excited about it. So yeah, that again, that magazine, the rest of the articles and kind of the full spread will be out later this week. The movie
Yeah.
drops in June of
This coming June,
2023.
huh?
This coming June. Yeah,
Wow.
not too
So they're
far
on
away.
it then.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully a trailer by the end of the year. We'll see.
Right.
Staying in the realm of Indiana Jones, there's been a rumor going around. This is not officially confirmed or anything, but a lot of sites are reporting that Disney Plus is working on a series for Indiana Jones, which would not focus on Indy. It would actually focus on his mentor, who's mentioned in Raiders of the Lost Ark, Abner Ravenwood, who
Oh,
is
okay.
Marion's father. And it's mentioned that he studied under him at the University of Chicago, and this guy
Uh-huh.
was an archaeologist as well. So this is a character, fans like me who grew up watching these movies know all the lore, all the characters, even the little mentions like this guy. It's kind of a dream come true. I mean, I feel like I'm the only one who's actually wanted this. I've actually been interested in who this guy was,
Right.
who even knew who he was. But yeah, I'm really interested and excited to see if they end up going forward with that. Doing a younger version of Professor Ravenwood, I think would be a really cool way to go, where it doesn't have to be about Indy,
Right.
because
Right.
no one else can play that character. I mean,
Well, wasn't there a show called Young Indiana Jones
there
back in the day?
was there was young Indiana Jones. Yeah, it
You ever
was him
watch
from the
that?
time he was like 10 to like
Oh,
25 or something. He was really young. And I did watch it. Yeah, it's actually pretty interesting. It's very historical. It's almost more of a educational series where he'll bump into
hmm.
some figure from history
Oh,
and
okay,
you'll
gotcha.
kind
Yeah,
of,
one of
learn
those
all
kind. Yeah,
about whoever that person is and what he did.
yeah. Okay,
So
interesting.
yeah, it was fun. It was fun. The episodes were long. They were like hour and a half episodes. It was like a
Oh,
full movie. And yeah, but really really well done. But
hmm.
so yeah, we'll just have to wait and see what they end up doing with Indy in the future, because obviously, Lucasfilm and Disney want that franchise to continue. And
Yeah, I'm
that would
sure.
be a cool way to do it, is to do just a new character in the same universe, basically.
True.
All right, so moving on now to our next story, staying in the TV realm. Streaming has obviously taken over. Every streaming service wants their big kind of show that everyone tunes in for every week. And the company Sony, who own the rights to Spider-Man, are looking to capitalize on the popularity of that character. So they're developing a show called Silk Spider Society. For those
Hmm.
unfamiliar with the comic, Silk is a teenage girl who kind of develops these
Oh,
spider powers.
oh,
And
really?
so she's a newer character in the comics. I haven't read much about her, but she's got a really cool character design if you look up images of her online. And there's partnering with Amazon. So Amazon will
Okay.
produce this series, which has not even started shooting yet, but they're just in the early development stages. And it is going to launch a whole Spider-Man live action TV universe, basically, to kind of go along with what they're doing in the movies. So we're not sure if it is going to connect with the MCU or not, if it's going to be
Okay.
connected to any of the older movies or what.
Right.
But it should be interesting to see what they do with that. It's a newer character in the comics, and I think it could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, did you ever watch the old I don't know if it was any good, but the Spider-Man TV show from back in the 80s? Did you ever get your hands on that?
I don't think I ever have. No, I've heard of it though, and
Yeah,
I've heard there was.
I was pretty young when it came
Yeah,
out, so
you
I
watched
can't
it.
really vouch for. No, well, I
Yeah,
mean, I would try to catch it when it was on, but I mean,
right,
if the early 80s wasn't like it is now, where stuff where you can find anything really. If
sure,
you saw
right,
it, great. If not, you were done. You'd never see it again, pretty
right,
much. In fact, I had to wait like over 2 decades to even get a Spider-Man movie. After that
right,
TV
right.
show, so forever
Sure.
we didn't have any
Yeah,
Spider-Man, video
yeah.
content.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I've heard there was that one. I know there was also, I've seen the like opening intro of the Spider-Man Japanese version,
Oh,
which is
really?
really interesting. Yeah, it's very
Okay,
different.
okay. Huh.
And yeah, so there hasn't been a lot of Spider-Man TV outside of animation. Of course, he's
Right.
always been
Yeah.
an animated series, but yeah, as far as live action, they haven't
Hmm.
done a lot with that. So yeah, that's a cool
Yeah.
way to go with it. And
Yeah. Different
with
twist. Yeah.
yeah, with the whole Spider-Verse thing going on, and the crossover we saw with No Way Home and all these things that, audiences are just getting used to this idea of multiple spider
Right.
people or multiple versions of these characters. So yeah, it's definitely a cool way to capitalize on that. All right, last piece of movie news before we get into the couple trailers that we wanted to talk about was Spielberg movie. We know what our next Spielberg movie is. He announced that
Oh.
he is developing a movie based on Bullet. I don't know if you've seen Bullet,
Oh.
Steve
I've not
McQueen.
seen it. Definitely know what it is though. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely worth watching. Really cool
Yeah.
movie. Crime kind of cop drama. Features one of the best car chases in movie history. It's awesome car
Oh.
chase in San Francisco. And
Okay. Okay.
he's not remaking it though.
Oh.
This is going to be a new story with about that character,
Ah.
basically. And of course, Steve McQueen's no longer with us, so he's getting Bradley Cooper to star as the cop Frank Bullitt.
Oh,
So
cool.
that should be really interesting. I think Bradley Cooper, great actor. I like him in
Yeah.
everything I've seen him in.
Yeah.
He's done a great job, and so yeah, that should be a really um, compelling new film. Kind of different thing that Spielberg hasn't really delved into the crime genre a lot. So that should be a lot of fun.
Yeah. A little bit with Minority Report, but
That's
not
true.
a lot though. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's more sci-fi, but this will be
Hmm.
totally grounded, kind of more gritty, I feel
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
than what we're used
Right.
to with him. So yeah,
Right.
I'm excited to see what he does with that. They should start shooting that next year.
Got it.
Let's jump into our trailers. We wanted to talk about some trailers dropped recently that we wanted to discuss. The first one I wanted to talk about was John Wick Chapter 4. I am ecstatic about this. I'm a huge fan of this franchise. All these movies, I mean, these are some of the best action movies I think of the past, 10 or 20 years. Keanu Reeves is just great in this role. And kind of choreography, the fight choreography is just so good. I really like these films and the kind of universe they're building out. You learn a little bit more about it every movie, kind of this underworld of assassins and the whole kind of hierarchy and how it all works. It's really interesting. So very very excited about the fourth film. My John Wick story is we hadn't seen them until we heard the third one was coming out, and my wife and I rented them both and one weekend
Mhm.
watched both, then went to the theater and saw the third one. And so yeah, we're huge fans, all of us here. And so yeah, I'm excited for the fourth one coming out very soon. It looks like a lot more action, a lot more new cast members joining, which I know you're going to be excited about. One of them in particular, I know you're a big fan of Bill Skarsgård.
Oh, yes.
So
Yeah.
he's
Got to
he's
watch everything he's in.
yeah, he's amazing. And so he looks like he's kind of the main villain here. And then you have Donnie Yen as well. A great new addition who's, an incredible martial artist, has been in several movies, Ip Man, and he's in Rogue One. He's in a lot of good movies. Always has an interesting part to play. So yeah, I'm really excited about the fourth John Wick movie. What do you think of this trailer?
I think the trailer looks good. Honestly, though, my John Wick story is still being written because I
Oh,
have not
okay.
seen them. I'm kind
Oh,
of like where
okay.
you were before the last one.
Okay.
Because I mean, even if there wasn't a fourth one coming out, they're definitely
Sure.
high on my watch list. But it's
Right.
a little bit of a commitment. I mean, it's at least three movies, but
Yeah.
there's really no excuse to not watch them. I mean, Keanu is terrific. I love the. I mean, I've seen clips and
Yeah.
I'm well aware that Keanu is very much about making it realistic. The guy knows how to actually handle, the weapons and that kind of
Right.
stuff, and he does clearly he does the martial arts and things like that.
Yep.
So yeah, it won't be long before I watch all three of those ones. But yeah, the fourth one looks good. I mean, it looks like they're trying to build it more like an epic sort of adventure as opposed to whiz bang action.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it definitely has that feel to it. It's every movie in the series kind of gets bigger. Like I said, they kind of build the
Yeah,
world
yeah.
out more, you understand more about it. And so yeah, this seems to continue that trend. And for those who have seen the third one, I won't spoil it, but where he ends up at the end is kind of a cliffhanger, and you're kind of like, oh no,
Ah,
what's going to happen next? So
interesting.
it's cool to see where they're taking it. And yeah, I can't wait for you to watch all of them so we can have a whole, Wick podcast
Yes, I'd love
whenever
to.
that one comes out. So
Yeah.
that comes out March 24th, which I'm
Oh, good.
excited for. So
Wow, that's
pretty
soon.
soon. Yep. All right, next trailer was Elemental. Elemental is the latest from Pixar, the most reliable movie studio out there, I think. I mean, just
Right.
every movie they make is just it's good,
Yeah, they've
Um,
never made a bad one, really.
they've never made a bad one, and they're always such interesting new ideas.
Hmm.
So this one is no exception. It's obviously
Yeah.
from the title, it's all the people in this world are based on an element. So you have wind, you have water, you have fire, you have earth, you have all these different elements. And they all live together in some kind of, society or whatever. And they have like trains like we do. Like trailers her getting on this train and just so it's
Yeah.
just an interesting looking film. The visuals are astounding. And it's just a teaser, so we didn't get a whole lot here, but it's kind of this fire girl meets this water boy. And so you have these two obviously don't mix, but they're kind of, falling for one another. So it should be interesting
Right.
to see how that develops and the kind of story that they tell there. But yeah, just another great idea from Pixar. Looks like it's going to have some cool world building, some interesting characters, and so yeah, I'm interested. What did you think?
Yeah, and we talked about this one a while back when they announced it, and it's
That's
just
right,
kind of it's another. I mean, Pixar's got to have their big concept, and that's great because they're very like just have a basic, straightforward concept. That's not going to cut it when you work at
right.
Pixar. It's got to be pretty. It's got to really draw you in just right from the jump.
That's right.
And this is one of those kinds. So that's really
Yep.
good. Good to see Adam Sandler back as Waterboy here. Am I right about that?
Waterboy, that's right. Yes, my mama said. Uh,
Yeah, no, I'm sure it's not I'd be surprised if it's Adam Sandler, but
right.
no, yeah, it looks good. And the visuals in this don't look like a traditional like 3D animated film. It looks quite a bit more arty
Yeah.
than what we get from Pixar sometimes, right?
That's true. Yeah, it does look very has its own style.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
doesn't look like your typical Pixar film. So yeah, it's different for sure. I don't know what they did, but I mean, just with all the element, the fire, it looks so real, and the water, and
Hmm.
when that drop goes on her hand and the steam comes. I mean, just all these little
Yeah,
details are pretty incredible.
yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm excited about that one. That one comes out June 16th.
Okay.
So that one will be coming in 2023 as well. Last trailer we wanted to talk about, it was one that Bert, you sent me. I didn't even know about this. It's called The Recruit. And this is a Netflix series that's coming on December 16th. So pretty soon this will be available to watch on Netflix. And it's basically a kind of CIA, a kind of, new recruit at the CIA who's kind of learning the ropes basically. And what I liked about the trailer was, so many of these shows I feel like today, they feel like they have to be darker and darker and more intense and gritty.
Sure.
And this
Yeah,
is not
yeah.
that. This has a lot of
Right.
humor in it, which I thought was
Yes.
really interesting. And so that's why I'm curious. I think it's gonna, it's a difficult balance to make sometimes, but the trailer had me. I mean, the trailer, I feel like they were nailing the tone,
Hmm.
and the actors seemed like they were doing a great job. It looked like it was really well shot. Noah Centineo is the lead actor here, and I just saw him in Black Adam. He played one of the members of the Justice Society named Adam
Okay.
Smasher,
Oh,
and
okay.
he's a really good actor. I liked him in that role. I hadn't seen him in anything before. He's a
Hmm.
really young guy, but I really liked him in that movie, and I liked him in this trailer. He seemed like a guy I could root for. And so yeah, I'm all in on this. I can't wait to check it out. What did you think?
Yeah, and I the comedy was hitting just right, the sarcastic sort of one-liners and stuff. And I love a
Right.
good, smart action film or TV show.
Yeah.
And so I have high hopes for it. Let's see if it delivers. But man, when an action movie is good, it's some of the best, some of my favorite movies to watch.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it had a little bit of like a Bourne vibe,
Yeah, yeah.
but it had, like I
But
said,
comedy.
more comedy. Yeah, more of that sense
Yeah,
of humor that was just
right.
different, and but
Yeah.
it totally worked. So yeah, that should be a lot of fun. That again comes out December 16th on Netflix. All right, well that's it for movie news. we want to talk a little bit about why we're doing a Spielberg podcast. Well, first of all, The Fabelmans is in theaters right now, so this was kind of our excuse to do this. But really, I've been wanting to do a Spielberg podcast ever since I started this. He's my favorite filmmaker of all time. He's made some of my favorite movies of all time. My favorite movie of all time, if any of you have watched our top 5 films podcast, Raiders of the Lost Ark, is my number one. So, Spielberg, he's just an incredible filmmaker. His kind of mark on cinematic history is kind of unmatched to this point in history. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about kind of who he is, where he came from before we jump into talking about his films. And so he's a 75-year-old filmmaker. He's about to turn 76 in just a couple weeks. And he was born December 18th, 1946, Cincinnati, Ohio. And he was born in a Jewish household. So his mother, Leah, was a concert pianist and eventually a restaurant owner, and very much a free spirit. And that's kind of who his mother was. His father, Arnold, was an electrical engineer, so kind of much more analytical kind of scientist. And he has 3 younger sisters. They had a lot of fun growing up together. His family did move around a lot, but he primarily grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. So a lot of time, down there in the desert, playing around outside. His parents, when he was young, took him to see Cecil B. DeMille's The Greatest Show on Earth, which is a big movie from back in the 50s about a circus. And that started his obsession with film and filmmaking. And so he quickly became a student of, movies, movie fanatic. He learned so much from kind of the old Hollywood masters. I've got a few movies here that he's a big fan of. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Frank Capra was a director he talks about a lot. John Ford, who made movies like The Searchers, a lot of the old classic westerns. He's a big fan of Stanley Kubrick, who he later actually became close friends with.
Oh, really?
Later in life, after he became a filmmaker, they became very close. So Kubrick is a guy he liked. Guy he really liked that he cites a lot is David Lean. David Lean made big epic movies like Ridge on the River Kwai, Lawrence of Arabia.
Sure.
Spielberg saw Lawrence of Arabia like 3 times opening weekend, so he was obsessed with that movie.
Gotcha.
He's a big fan of Hitchcock as well. So all the Hitchcock movies he really likes too. And so he really studied all these guys and kind of what they did. And at age 12 is when he began shooting his own movies at home on 8 millimeter. He borrowed his dad's video camera and started recording short films and editing them himself, making movies with his sisters at home. And when he was about 19, his parents got a divorce. And that had a big impact on him. And you see that throughout his whole filmography. I'm sure we'll talk about that several times throughout. He deals a lot with broken families in his movies. And so he ended up moving with his mother to Los Angeles. And once he was in LA, he was right next to the big movie studio. So he started sneaking on the studio lots. And that's how he kind of learned about filmmaking. He was actually sneaking on whether it be just television sets or movie sets, wherever he could sneak in, he would. And so he did that a lot as a teenager. Eventually started directing television, and then he directed a TV movie, which was so good that they released it in theaters. It's called Duel. And I just actually did one of my videos for my Real Collection videos on that yesterday. You can check that on the channel now. And his next film was The Sugarland Express, which was another moderate hit. And then he got to make Jaws. And the rest, as they say, is history. He's currently the highest grossing director of all time. He's made all kinds of different movies in many different genres. He has 140 Oscar nominations and 35 wins. Total of over 10 billion at the box office. So he's the most popular, celebrated, influential director of all time. So that's a little bit about Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, you mentioned the variety. He's got a little bit of something for everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody might not like every one of his films,
Right.
but there's a lot of variety over that his entire catalog.
Yeah.
I want to mention a couple things. I mean, the guy is he's a master storyteller. I mean, essentially, his work is a master class of how to do what he does, right?
Right.
And from start to finish, there's really, yeah, I certainly don't know any director that has so many great films over the course. Like there might be like a like a 7 or 8 year stretch with like Nolan where I'm like, oh, these are like, you know, 5 of these movies are in my top 20 of all time or something.
Right.
But I
Right.
mean, you look at the entire career and how long this career is too,
Hmm.
and it really is unmatchable.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't shy away from difficult themes,
Right.
which is interesting because I think I feel like years ago he was more in the corner a little bit of, oh, he makes family films, you know, like he's more
Right.
about sort of this warm fuzzy kind of stuff,
Yeah.
but not so much really, especially in the last 20 years, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
He handles a lot of difficult subject matter, and he doesn't really apologize for that or back away from it. I
Yeah.
mean, films like Munich, Saving Private Ryan, Amistad, and then you know, some really heavy themes in movies like Minority Report, War of the Worlds. I mean, there's some really serious heavy stuff that he
Yeah.
addresses and entertains at the same time,
Right.
so it's hard to pull all of that off, you
It
know.
is. Yes. Absolutely.
And I feel he's on one hand too, he's kind of the master of horror, you know, a big budget horror, that is, you know,
Yeah.
like he uses his budget to great effect.
Right.
And he
Right.
knows how to scare his
Right.
audiences.
Yes.
And something I'm really big on is visuals. You know, he obviously
Mm.
he very often has used Janusz Kaminski and who's brilliant and just gives this great look to basically every film that he does with the lighting and you know all that goes into the cinematography and all that.
Right.
And also Spielberg's films usually always have high production value, going way back to, you know, at least Raiders. You know, I mean, you can
Right.
see that this is, you know, Hollywood at its I guess not just biggest budget, but Hollywood at its best, I guess, or at
Yeah.
least, you know, what you would hope to see from Hollywood.
Sure. Yeah.
um,
Absolutely.
yeah, and then also with special effects,
Mm.
you know, going back to the practical effects that he was so good at, so good.
Right.
I mean, like, I'm not talking about just he can carry off the illusion, but I mean, it's you know, most of the time seamless, and you feel like
Yes.
you're really watching the pro at what he did, you know, back in the 80s.
Yep.
And then, you know, that turned into, you know, him being a pioneer in the 90s with, you know, basically helping create CGI,
Yeah.
which changed almost every movie since then, you
Right.
know, except for maybe
Yes.
a few low budget dramas or something.
Sure.
And so that completely changed film pretty much as we know it.
Yeah.
And so that very thing though, CGI in his films are usually always super polished. Like you don't see
Mhm.
junky CGI. You know, he's got
Right.
this ultra high standard,
Yes.
and
Exactly.
so that's why it's usually pretty rewarding to watch pretty much anything he makes.
Yeah. I
Those are just a
agree.
few thoughts I have, you know, about this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. All those were spot on. All those were spot on. That was great. Yeah. He definitely, yeah, has a high standard. I like that, because yeah, you can tell in all of his movies, and you know, again. That's why in the biography I just stopped at Jaws because I said the rest is history because that movie is what changed his life, changed
Yeah,
Hollywood. I mean, it
yeah,
changed everything because from that point on, it was the first blockbuster, right? So it
yeah.
made so much money that the studios just let him do whatever he wanted.
Hmm.
And so you know, he could have pretty much whatever kind of budget he wanted, and you know, get involved with the best of the best that were working in the
Right,
industry. So
right.
yeah, yeah, and he's always been at the cutting edge of technology, film technology. He's pushed it forward. But
Hmm.
that's funny because he is such a traditionalist. He's one of the few guys left who just uses film. He doesn't shoot digitally at all.
Right,
Um,
right.
so he's very much a traditionalist. He loves, you know, like I said, old movies. He's always hearkening back to, you know, the classics of cinema, and is a huge pioneer and our champion of classic Hollywood movies. So yeah, it is
Yeah.
interesting that he's been at the forefront of, you know, computer generated technology, and you know,
Hmm.
recently with motion capture technology and that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. But at the same time, he's kind of old school in a lot of ways, you know, which I think it's that blend that really makes his movies so unique and special,
Hmm.
because you know, you can just tell he's got such a passion for it. And so yeah, I like that you mentioned some of his frequent collaborators. You mentioned Kaminsky, who he's worked with 20 times. I think
Wow.
everything since Schindler's List he's done with him,
Oh wow. Yeah,
his
yeah.
cinematographer. So Yeah, that's a huge collaborator that's so important. The other one that is actually his most frequent collaborator, I didn't know, is Michael Kahn, who's his editor.
Oh,
He's been editing with Spielberg on 31 of his 35 films.
okay.
So pretty much every movie that he's made has been with Michael Kahn, who, editing, as we both know, is a huge part of what makes a movie
It can
work.
make or break it. Yeah.
Yep,
Hmm.
absolutely. His second, biggest collaborator most people know is John Williams, the composer, who
Sure.
they've
Yeah.
worked with
Yeah.
on. He's worked with him on 29 films. So he's another big part of it. He always says John Williams
Yeah.
is the guy who's responsible for, making my movies as great as they are. And so that's a big one. Rick Carter, he's worked with on 11 films. He's a production designer, and
Oh,
so they've collaborated many times. And of course, his most frequent acting collaborator is Tom Hanks. They've worked on 5 films together. He's almost tied with Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford, he's worked on 4, obviously all 4 Indiana Jones, 5 if you count the deleted scene in E.T. There's actually a deleted scene in E.T. where Harrison Ford shows up as the principal of Elliot's school, but you don't see his face. You just hear his voice. He's sitting in the chair, and it's a
interesting.
fun deleted scene. If you have the Blu-ray, I highly recommend watching it. It's pretty fun, but it ended up being cut out of the movie. But so yeah, so those are. I just wanted to mention some of his frequent
That's great.
collaborators because all those
Yeah.
people are so important. And he said, people have asked him, why don't you mix it up a little bit and work with other people? And he said, well, when you find the best, you just want to work with the best. And these guys are just the best. So I
Well,
don't
and
really.
yeah, as an example, I mean, John Williams' theme from Jaws doesn't sound like the theme from, I mean, any of the other movies, like
Right.
you're not hearing a lot of repeating themes. And I will say
Yes.
some great composers like James Horner and a few others, I do hear some repeating themes
Sure.
sometimes.
Sure.
And so the
Right.
fact that he has so many distinct themes that has
Yeah.
helped propel these movies forward, certainly.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, those are some of the collaborators that he's worked with before. And so yeah, that's a little bit about Spielberg, who he is, where he's from, and what he's all about. So you ready to jump into this top 5?
Let's do it.
All right, so now we're going to jump into our top 5. We just wanted to give a few reasons, kind of the ways we went about picking this top 5. Because this is a hard one. I mean, that like I said, he's my favorite filmmaker. He's made, over 30 movies, and they're all pretty much all great. So it's kind of hard to go about picking just 5 to talk about on a podcast. But what I wanted to do was pick, a wide array of different kinds of movies. I'm not just going to pick all Indiana Jones movies. That would take up 4 slots, so I'm not going to do that. So I wanted to kind of pick, ones from different genres. I didn't want them all to be sci-fi. I didn't want them, all to be war movies or whatever. So I wanted to be varied. I wanted them to, show different sides of him as a person, as a filmmaker. And so, I kind of thought about it as, I've said this before. If someone's never seen Spielberg movies, and they could only watch 5, these are the 5 I would show them, basically. That's kind of, the way I thought about it. If I could only keep 5, going to a deserted island or whatever,
Yeah.
these are the 5 I would probably take with me. So that's kind of a couple of ways I tried to think about it in my head. Did you have any specific criteria you were looking for?
Yeah, the thing you said about like if you could show someone 5 of his movies, that's it for me. I'd like to say mine are more varied. Mine are actually somewhat kind of along the same lines.
Okay. Okay.
And I'll explain as I go a little bit.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is these are my favorite 5, and so I just had to go with what they are. Even if, I mean, the fact is he hits these films are so good, and they just happen to be my favorite kinds of films, I guess you can say. So it's
Sure.
hard for me to cast one off and
Yeah.
replace it with something that's a very well made movie,
Right.
but not the first 5 I would show somebody if I'm saying this is why.
Sure.
Yeah.
I hear you. I hear you. Gotcha. Okay, cool. All right. Well, let's jump into some honorable mentions before we jump into our top 5. Like I said, he's made so many movies. So many of them are so good that we could just talk all day about his entire filmography. Maybe we'll do that eventually on a podcast, but not today. The I will mention there's only 3 movies I haven't seen that he's made.
Ah,
One of them is Always. Still have not
oh,
seen Always. Have
mhm.
not seen Lincoln yet.
Yeah, I haven't
Couldn't
seen
find that
Lincoln.
one. Couldn't find it streaming.
Huh.
And then Fablemans is his most
Right.
recent one. And
Right.
then it doesn't really count. I mean, he directed a segment of it. It's the Twilight Zone movie that came out in the 80s.
Oh, right. Yeah,
He
yeah. I did see
directed a
that way back.
segment of that, which it's
Gotcha.
four different directors, four different kind of shorts put
Yeah.
together. So I
Right,
haven't
right.
seen that either. But yeah, those are the only ones I haven't seen. Are there any you haven't seen before?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's a few.
No.
I've never seen Amistad.
Oh,
There's definitely a few. As I went down
okay.
through, I can't think offhand what they are, but yeah,
Okay.
there's probably. I mean, he's made so many. There's probably at least
Yeah.
10 I haven't seen.
Oh, okay.
But
Gotcha.
I've seen quite a few of them anyway.
Gotcha. Great. Yeah, I got to rewatch many of these over the last week, and it's funny. I kept trying to look for, technique and like, how he moves and how he does things, and I always just end up getting caught up in the story and just forgetting
Right,
about all that, which I guess is the best
right.
compliment you could give a director.
Yeah.
So
Oh, it's
that
like when I try to write a review or when I finish a movie and I'm like, I probably should have been taking like a couple notes because that was
right.
a really interesting movie, but
Yeah.
like I'm just gonna have to try to recall now
Right,
because you
exactly.
get caught
Yeah.
up in it. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. Which again, I think that's the point. That's what he's trying to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, look, I'll mention some honorable mentions. I think there's only three movies he's made that I kind of didn't like.
Hmm.
1941, I'm not a fan of.
Oh, I did not see that one.
Yeah, it's not great.
That
Even
was an
he,
80s film, right?
yes, it came out in 79. It
Oh,
was John
79. Okay.
Belushi,
Okay. Oh, really?
Dan Aykroyd.
Oh.
His attempt at comedy just
Oh,
didn't he didn't
okay.
he didn't quite pull it off.
Okay,
And
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, he even admits he's not a big fan of it. But
Oh.
um, The Lost World, we talked about in our Jurassic podcast. I'm not crazy about that sequel. And then
You actually
Hook.
give that one under 5 stars, that one? I mean, I
Yeah,
sorry, under 2.5 stars, I mean.
yeah, I think I gave it two. I think I gave it two.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
wow. Okay.
yeah. I'm not really into it. But the only other one that I gave a mixed review, 2.5, was Hook. That one I think it got away from him a little bit. So that one doesn't really work
I
for
did not
me.
like Hook either. I remember
Yeah,
watching it in the theater and I didn't think it was that great.
yeah. Yeah, so those are the only ones I dislike. Everything else I like. So, I could talk about again all of them. I guess I'll mention the one that was closest to making it, which was War of the Worlds. War of the Worlds was so close to being in the top five.
Mm,
I think
yeah.
that is, 5-star film. It's great on every level. So that one was
Oh, wow.
really close to being in there.
Yeah.
Jurassic Park is another one, which again we talked about on our Jurassic podcast. Another 5-star movie, just great all around. Munich, I think I'm a huge fan of Munich. That's such a
Yeah.
well-made
Yeah.
movie. We got to rewatch Catch Me If You Can. That's a great
Oh, that's a
one.
good one. That's a good one. Yeah.
Really fun. Minority Report is one of my favorites. It's so good. His recent West Side Story, which I know you're not a huge musical guy, but
Right.
man, just the way that movie looks. I mean, you would like
Yeah.
it. Just turn the sound off and watch it because it is
Really.
phenomenal. The cinematography, the lighting, really, really good.
Yeah.
So I recommend that one.
Okay.
Um, I'm a huge fan of Empire of the Sun. This is
Mm. I did
young
see that.
Christian Bale. Yeah, you have
Yeah.
seen that one?
I saw that in the theater. I was pretty
Did
young
you?
when I saw it.
Wow.
And I didn't understand it. That's how young I
Yeah,
was. I had
sure.
no clue what was going on.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot going on in that one, and it's just so emotional, so
Mm,
kind of moving to do a war movie like that from a child's perspective, and it's Christian Bale in his, earliest role.
he
And
gets
it's just
separated from his family, doesn't he, in
he
the movie?
does, yeah, gets separated from
Yeah.
his
Yeah. Yeah.
parents, yeah, has to survive on his own, and yeah, just
A
incredible.
common theme in some of his movies.
It is, yeah, it
Hmm.
is. So yeah, the Terminal we've talked about
Yeah.
before too, which is just
Good
so
one.
much fun, so great. Last night I got to rewatch Bridge of Spies,
Oh, I've not seen that
which
one.
oh, you
Yeah.
haven't? Okay. Well,
Mm-mm.
when I first watched it, I liked it. I gave it like 3.5 stars. I thought it was really
Mm.
solid. Last night after watching it, I got to give that thing 4.5 stars. I mean, that is just a
Wow.
phenomenal movie. The themes he's dealing with, the fact that it's a true story,
Yeah.
the performances by Tom Hanks and Mark Rylance are off the charts. I mean, just
Hmm.
really, really good performances. Just really well told story.
Okay.
And
I'll
so
have to track
yeah,
that one down.
yeah, highly recommend that one. So those are a few I had. What do you got for your honorable mentions?
Well, yeah, I'll mention five quickly, and then one I want to just talk about for just a minute.
Yeah,
But I mean, I could mention 20 of them, that are honorable mentions. But like the few
exactly.
I wrote down, I went back and rewatched The Terminal. Just a really solid whimsical drama. It's
Right.
really good.
Yes.
Munich is a really good tense drama. You know,
Yeah.
Saving Private Ryan, an amazing theater experience, but it was so hard to take in because
Yeah.
because of the subject matter, that I've
Yeah.
honestly never watched it since, and I would
Yeah.
watch it again. But a lot of really well made war films are hard in that sense. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
I agree. It's the same for me. I don't even watch it every year. I watch it like every
Yeah,
2 or 3 years because yeah, it is
yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah, just harrowing.
Yeah, I mean, it
Yeah,
could be his number one film. I mean,
sure.
it's just that from rewatchability, it's tough, you know.
Right, exactly. Yes, I hear you.
um, Raiders is obviously a great classic.
Sure.
I did go back and rewatch Always. Always is one that I
Mm,
watched a few times back near like when it came out,
okay.
and it's a good drama. It's a little
Hmm.
bit long, but
Okay.
it's good if you get a chance to watch it. I think you'd like it.
Yeah, I'll check it
Deals
out.
with the afterlife and that kind of thing.
Okay. Okay, cool.
A much more of a laid back kind of film for Spielberg. There's
Yeah.
not a lot of like in your face kind of stuff,
Okay. Okay.
but some good performances. And then the one
Great.
I had to talk about is AI, artificial intelligence.
Yes. So glad you brought this up. This one, okay, let me tell you my
Go
story of
ahead.
this one
Yeah.
real quick
Go ahead.
because
Yeah, yeah.
I saw this when I was quite young. I think only maybe a year or two after it came out. So I would have only been maybe 11 or 12 when I
Oh, that's
watched it.
intense for that age.
And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so I didn't know, really what was going on. Certain images really stood out in my mind,
I bet. Yeah.
but it's one that I hadn't revisited. And
Hmm.
I got to watch it this week,
Oh, good. Good.
and that movie is incredible. I mean, really, really good. I mean, just
Yeah.
visually, but man, the themes and the story and the characters and what David goes through in that story is so intense. I mean, it's just emotional, just
Yeah.
thinking
Yeah.
about it is
Yeah.
just what they deal with there is really interesting. And I don't know how much you know about it, but it was originally going to be a Stanley Kubrick film. Did you know that?
Really? No, I did not
Yeah,
know
he
that.
he
Oh.
actually wrote like a 90-page treatment for the
Oh,
film. So he had the whole
interesting.
first act and the whole third act written. So the
Okay.
the the whole like first part of the movie, last part of the movie was all Stanley Kubrick, and Spielberg
Okay.
kind of had to bridge the two.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he was talking to him a lot as Stanley Kubrick was getting older and kind of,
Yeah. Yeah.
failing health, realized he wasn't
Right.
going to be able to direct it, and he basically gave it to Spielberg and said, "Go make
Gotcha.
this movie." So Spielberg got
Huh.
to go make it, and he just did a great job. And it's
Yeah.
interesting blending those two filmmakers because Kubrick is known for being very cold and cerebral in his kind of filmmaking style. 2001: A Space Odyssey, and
Yeah.
all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And Spielberg's basically the opposite. He's like the optimistic, hopeful, kind of cheery guy. So
Not so much in
blending,
this film, though.
right, exactly. It was an interesting challenge, I think, for him to kind of bridge those two
Yeah.
together, and he
Yeah.
just did a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
Really well done. So yeah. Anyways, go ahead and give me your thoughts on AI.
Gosh, this one is probably his bleakest film, right? As far
Sure.
as the premise and
Yep.
in spoilers ahead, of course, but
Sure. Yeah.
David, played by a 12-year-old Haley Joel Osment, fresh off
Right.
of Sixth Sense. I
Yeah.
mean, he's playing an android, but you never really feel like it's an android. You feel like it's
No.
a real boy
Yeah. Yeah.
because I guess the android's programmed that well, but also because Haley Joel Osment is like the best child actor ever. And
Yes.
that, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So the emotions that he portrays are so
Hmm.
convincing.
Yep.
That's why, you know, it, as if it's not disturbing enough that this family basically loses their son and they replace him
Right.
with an android son. I mean,
Right.
that's
Right.
disturbing enough.
Yeah.
But if that's not, I mean, that's not even close to how disturbing it gets when
Right.
the mom drives him out into the middle of nowhere.
Yes. Yes.
Literally, I mean,
Right.
that is extremely hard to watch.
Yeah.
And
Extremely. Yeah.
Osment, the way he plays it, I
Yep.
mean, you totally feel like it's really happening. And
Yeah.
you
Right.
you know, I mean, it's just devastating to watch. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess that's
It
just the
is.
best way to put it.
Yes.
And so yeah, I mean, it's just if I was going to go with more variety, this definitely would be in my top five.
Okay.
Entertainment wise, I feel like the movie does stumble a little bit,
Hmm.
but it's just so interesting. It's one of those,
Yeah.
I wouldn't give it 5 stars, but I've watched the film 5 or 6 times. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because it's so
Yeah.
interesting, like what
Right.
Spielberg does with the visuals. Again, in this film, like that. It's almost like he returned to his circus roots, right? That circus
Yeah.
inspiration he had from
Right.
the beginning of his life,
Yes.
because you get those androids that are being junked and destroyed, and
Right.
and what they did with like the removal of the faces with
Yeah.
CGI,
Oh
and
yeah.
is really
Seamless. I
just
mean, yeah, and it's
seamless and
creepy.
disturbing.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is. It
yeah.
is. Yeah, totally.
So anyway, it's a movie I could talk about a lot,
Yeah.
and it is very, very interesting. I'll put it that
Yep.
way.
Yep.
And like I said, I've seen it 5 or 6 times. I watched it again this last week, and it's one of his more notable films.
Yeah.
And I almost put it in my top five, but yeah, pretty difficult watch. And yeah, obviously it's a futuristic,
Yeah.
film, and goes 2,000 years into the future by the end. So
Right.
it's a lot to take in.
It is. It is a lot. It is a
Yeah.
big movie, big ideas. Yeah, Haley Joel Osment is incredible, and it's great that he got to work with Spielberg because Spielberg's known for working with kids, right? That's like his
Hmm.
thing is like child
Yeah. Yeah.
perspective, that kind of youthful kind of energy he has, and the fact that those two got to collaborate on this movie is really cool because they just knocked it out of the park. I mean, they did things that were just really incredible and impactful and just memorable.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, and
it's a good.
Osment, yeah, I got to think, again, we talked about this before, like when the kid actors are in the movie and terrible things are happening. Like, I mean, I know it's a film set and he's probably a pro at age 12, but
Sure.
I mean, going through that, even pretending, you would
Yeah.
think, did that like somehow impact him? Like, you
Right.
don't just want to play around with those kind of
I
heavy
know.
ideas that
Yeah.
of abandonment and stuff like that. But he's
Right.
probably fine.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully he had great
He's in
parents
modern
that were
movies and
on set and yeah.
right.
Right.
Yeah, so that was
Yeah.
my other honorable mention I had to throw out there.
Awesome. Great. Okay, cool. Well, that's our honorable mentions then. Like I said, I could just keep talking about every single one of his movies. I own most of them, as you can see behind me, but we'll go ahead and just jump into our top five now. You ready?
Ready?
All right, here's our top five. Bert, why don't you kick us off?
Okay. Well, I'm going to start off with one that definitely isn't one of your favorites then, and that's
Okay.
going to be Jurassic World 2, or Lost
Oh,
World of Jurassic Park, however you want to name it.
okay.
Yeah, and we did cover this at length in our Jurassic Park podcast, so
We
I'll just
did.
say a few kind of short words about it.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
mean, obviously, the sequel to the box office mammoth of Jurassic Park.
Sure.
I felt like the whole production was sort of scaled up from its predecessor.
Hmm.
Not a better story though. More
Sure.
action,
Yep.
new dinosaurs, kind of a quicker pace.
Right.
And there's a lot of comedy there to break the tension.
Hmm.
Lots of scares, and just bigger. I feel like bigger action scenes in general.
Sure.
Goldblum he gets more of a starring role in this one, and he's great.
Yeah.
Obviously, he really grounds the film, because of his
Yeah.
quirkiness. I don't know, somehow he does
Yes.
that,
Totally.
and the
Totally.
audience really kind of connects with him.
Right.
And there's some good new characters like Roland, played by Pete Postlethwaite, and
Yes. Great character.
uh, Peter Stormare,
Yeah.
is kind of a bad guy, I suppose you
Right.
could say.
Right.
And this is a film that I especially for select scenes, I've watched dozens of times,
Yeah.
because when I got my first surround sound system, this was the film that I put
Oh,
on,
okay.
and DTS 5.1 to show off
Sure.
the surround sound and the
Yeah.
cracking of the glass in that
Right.
famous scene of
Yeah.
the it's kind of an unlikely scene, but the RV going over the edge of the cliff there,
Yeah.
just a scene that's so much fun. And I just have a lot of fun with this movie from start to finish.
Hmm.
There's high production quality, and
Yep.
I like the look of it. It's just a great film.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. I don't mind watching it. It's not a movie I
Yeah,
actively
yeah,
hate or anything.
sure, yeah,
I have
yeah.
a good time with it. It's just certain aspects of it take me out of the movie. Gymnastics girl kicking the
Yes,
Velociraptor is one we
true.
mentioned.
It's not a perfect
Um,
film. I'm not going to sit
yeah.
here and say there's nothing wrong with it, but
Sure.
yeah,
It's just got a few issues. The ending seems a
sure,
little tacked on, like he just wanted to do a Godzilla movie, so he, made the
sure,
T-Rex
yeah.
storm
And I
around.
right, and I was kind of glad he did that.
Yeah,
Like, I was surprised because I thought the movie was over, and
right.
then that was added, and that was pretty cool. I thought the way
Yeah,
that he did bring the dinosaur over to the mainland or whatever,
right,
but
right.
yeah, I get what you're saying. It did
Yeah,
kind of seem tacked on, sure, yeah.
yeah. But yeah, there's definitely a lot to like there. I mean, it's his craft is still on display. So, not a bad movie by any means, but yeah, just not one of my favorites. So, all right, we'll jump into my number five, which is one that I when I first started this list, I did not have in my top five. Did not expect it to be in my top five,
Mm.
but on rewatch, it had to be in the top five because this is an incredible movie. It is Warhorse from 2011.
I've never even heard
Uh,
of this movie.
oh, really? Oh, okay.
Right.
War Horse. Okay, let me tell you about it. War Horse is a um, film based on a 1982 novel.
Oh,
Um, and this film follows a horse during World War One.
true
So
story? True, like
it
a
is not a
based
true
on a.
story. It is not a true
Oh,
story.
okay, okay.
No. But basically, the movie, the opening scene is the birth of this horse, and the horse is sold to this farmer, and his wife and son have to use this horse to kind of, make ends meet, basically. So, uh,
Oh,
they kind of use him to plow a field and all this stuff, and then war breaks out in Europe. It's all takes place in Europe, entirely European cast as well.
oh,
Um, and so, but what's interesting is, this it's an epic. I mean, it's 2.5 hour film. It's all about, World War One, and
okay.
the horse is really the catalyst for telling several different stories about various different people and how they're all dealing with the outbreak of World War One. And
Oh,
so, you have the horse with the farm family, and then, they kind of fall in hard times and have to sell the horse to the British Army.
oh.
The
So the
British,
plot kind of follows where the horse
yeah,
goes.
exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
the
yeah.
horse then goes with the
Sure.
British soldiers, and you see
Okay.
them, and
Interesting.
then, he kind of gets lost, and then he's with the German soldiers, and then he's in the trenches, and it just goes through all of these different characters and how they interact with this horse, and how, the kind of has an effect on their life, basically, and how the war
So it's the
affects
horse
them.
POV, is what you're
It's
saying.
kind of horse POV. Yeah, yeah. Much of it is. Much
Horse
of it
cam.
is.
Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, it's pretty interesting, and just different.
Okay.
I've never seen a movie
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. Even movies like
Right.
Old Yeller, or, other horse movies, Black Stallion or whatever.
Mhm.
It's not as much, horse perspective, where you're
Right.
following this kind of journey of this animal.
That is kind of
Um,
unique. Yeah.
yeah, it is. It is, and it's just so well done. I was really amazed by it. And again, I'd seen this when it came out, but it just didn't hit me as hard as it did now. But the cast, as I mentioned, an entirely European cast. Jeremy Irvine is the young boy who, first owns the horse. He's a unknown actor that Spielberg
Hmm.
found. I think he went through like 3,000 audition tapes to find this kid, and he does a great job. Peter Mullen is in it, Emily Watson,
Oh.
David Thewlis, uh,
Oh
um,
yeah.
Tom Hiddleston. Before, I think this came
Oh.
out the same year Thor came out, so right before he did
Okay.
Loki. Benedict Cumberbatch is also in it before
Really?
he was
Wow.
Doctor Strange. And so, yeah, we get some big name actors in there: Toby Kebbell, Leonard Caro, David Cross, Celine Buckins, and Niles Airstrup. And so, lot of good actors, some that I wasn't as familiar with, but all just delivered great performances. Totally natural and authentic, believable performances that were just really well done, including supporting actors, including extras. I mean, everyone in this movie is just really, really in it. And it features beautiful locations. I mean, it's all shot on location in Europe, and some sweeping shots of the countryside that are just gorgeous. Has this kind of grand scale to it, and some intense battle sequences that we get into in World War
Hmm.
One. And
Wow.
I watched an interview with Spielberg where he's talking about how he wanted the PG-13 rating because it's actually a children's novel. It's actually
Oh.
written for children, and so he obviously, didn't want the war scenes to be too gruesome. He didn't want it to be Saving Private Ryan or anything.
Gotcha.
So he
Right.
really had to find interesting ways to convey the violence without being gory, basically.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so he does
Huh.
that very well here. It's very some imagery here that's really interesting, and how he kind of got around that. And so all
Yeah.
of those elements are really well done. It's old fashioned filmmaking. A lot of people, when it first came out, said that it was kind of felt like an old school Hollywood movie. How kind of an older generation would have made this type of film, but he's using all the techniques that you would use now. All the modern technology. Although surprisingly, there's only 3 shots that are computer generated in this entire film.
Wow.
It's all practical effects. It's all there's not even any
Nice.
um animatronic horses or anything. I think he said there's an animatronic horse in
Oh,
like one or two shots, and it's just like
mhm.
certain things they had to do with the actors when they're riding the horse to get the shot correct. So
Oh,
yeah, all real horses involved, real locations. And one thing that Spielberg does so well that I'll just mention now that he does well in all of his movies is it's always very clear what's happening on screen. Geographically, you always understand where you are.
that's true. Yeah,
It's you never get confused as to what's going on. Emotionally, you
that's a good
always know
point.
what you're
Yeah,
supposed to be feeling,
right,
and so
right.
he's very clear in his storytelling in that way.
Yeah.
And yeah, just so much thought and care when in every shot. He does a lot of these kind of ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances kind of
Hmm.
stories. That's kind of what he's known for, and
Yeah.
that's definitely here. Coming of age, that's one of his big things, and that's definitely present in this one as well. So, really well done on every level. John Williams' score here, another great theme. I mean,
Mm.
really great theme. Over the credits, I just
Wow.
listened to it. I listened to the whole thing because it was just so well done.
Wow.
Got a lot of love at the Academy as well. Nominated
Oh.
for Best Picture, Art Direction,
Hmm.
Cinematography, Score, Sound Editing, and Sound Mixing. So a lot of Oscar nominations for this one. But yeah, it's not one that you hear about a lot. So that's why I definitely
Right.
wanted to mention it because on rewatch, I had to, first of all, give it 5 stars because I just thought it was wonderful. I got so caught up in it. And
Wow.
it's one that, again, no one really talks about. So definitely had to include it in the top five.
Nice. I'm gonna have to find that one.
Definitely. Definitely. All right, we're on to your number four. What you got?
I'm really excited about this one. I almost put this at number three. Um, a while back, I think you told me about this film, and
Okay.
so I got my hands on a 3D copy of it,
Oh.
and I was pretty much blown away. And that would be The Adventures of Tintin.
Yes, awesome, awesome. That's a great one. Yeah, I really want I going in, I thought that would be in my top five, and it
Ah,
didn't end up making it. So I'm really
gotcha.
glad it's in yours.
Yeah, I was blown away. Like I said, I didn't want too much recency bias because when you first see a great one, you're like, wow, this is better than this and that. And I'm like, slow down. It
Right.
is a really great one. I
Sure.
can't wait till the next time I see it.
Yeah.
It's is produced by him and Peter Jackson, which is interesting.
Right.
And it's for those that don't know, it's all computer animated, but it's more photorealistic,
Yeah.
obviously. And also but the way the characters move was so realistic. I almost wonder, I didn't look at any behind the scenes stuff, but I wonder if it was all motion capture because
It
it
was.
sure seemed like it,
It was. Yep.
and it was pretty clear that they weren't trying to make it look 100% photorealistic, but
Sure.
just the motion and fluidity of everything just looked very realistic.
Yeah.
And
This is
so it was right up my alley.
his first performance capture film. So it was all
Ah,
performance capture, and it
makes
was all
sense.
shot in the volume, and just the sound stage. So yeah, it was the first time he's
Gotcha.
ever gotten to play with that technology. And the behind the scenes is really fun because it's
Yeah,
very
I
much
bet.
like an old school guy learning a new technology and just having fun with it. He's just got a grin on his face the whole time. And so yeah, I highly
Gotcha.
recommend watching the behind the scenes because it is a lot of fun to see.
I will have to do that. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
probably on the Blu-ray.
Yep.
What is so amazing about this is it's like an action adventure film, but it's so imaginative what Spielberg does because it's not live action, so he doesn't literally set his camera somewhere.
Right.
So to have the advanced knowledge of how to make a scene flow like through the animators, I don't even know how someone would do that because
Yeah.
some of the camera setups are so incredibly inventive. That's all I
I
can
know.
say. It's just so
Yeah.
amazing to watch.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
just jaw-dropping
Yeah.
creativity,
Yes. Yes.
and
Definitely.
so much fun.
Yep.
There's this one of the best scenes is this pirate ship battle, and
Oh
just the
yeah.
crazy camera angles and the humor.
Yeah.
And also there's a lot of actually well-known names at the beginning, but I didn't recognize any of the actors,
Right.
which I always like because
Yes.
then sometimes I'm thinking, I wonder who that is, and then I find out later, one of them was Andy Serkis. I didn't even know it was
Yes.
him, and I
Right.
love that because I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, that's Andy Serkis. Like, I didn't even
Exactly.
know it was him. That's how
Right.
much he buried himself in that role.
Totally.
And
Yep.
so I checked after to find that out, but anyway, it's just a very immersive, fun film
Mhm.
for all ages, and I can't wait to see it again. It was great 3D, but I'm sure it'd be great in 2D as well.
Yeah.
And they actually announced a sequel. I don't know if you heard about this. Yeah, with Peter
Yes.
Jackson directing.
Right, right. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
they've been talking about that for a long time, and I really
Yeah,
hope it
that's what I
happens.
understand. Yeah,
Yeah.
supposedly there's been some more recent activity. Who
Oh,
knows,
good.
you know,
Good. Yeah, I hope so.
but
Because that's the cool thing about performance capture. It doesn't matter how old the actors are. It's like you can,
true.
they're whatever age they need to be.
And their voice
So
stays the same age. Yeah.
right, right. Yeah, I really hope that happens because yeah, I'm a huge fan of this one. And yeah, it is so much fun. Like you're saying, so imaginative. It's based on some comics by or books by Hergé, who's a
Oh,
French
really?
author. Yep, yep. And
Oh,
Peter Jackson grew up reading these,
oh,
and so
okay.
that's why he got involved. But um yeah, it's super fun. There's some great shots, great action, and
You can't even
it's
explain some of the
right.
things that you see.
I know. It's so funny too, and
Yeah, it is.
yeah, great, characters that are very exciting to watch. So yeah, it's a really, really fun movie. I'm glad you brought that one up.
Yeah, and the only other thing I wanted to say is that I also, for the first time, watched his other computer animated film, the BFG, the Big Friendly Giant.
Oh, sure, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I did not get that same feeling from that.
Okay. Yeah.
I haven't reviewed it yet, but I mean, I
Mm.
almost probably am less than 2.5 stars on it
Oh,
even.
okay. Yeah.
I just, but I don't want to get into it too much because I'm, we're talking about his, the best films,
Sure.
but sort of night and day difference.
Mm.
But yeah, if anybody gets the chance to see this 1010
Yeah.
film, which I don't think a lot of people have heard of even really, which is a
Yeah,
shame.
it is. It is unfortunate. It did kind of go under the radar, and this came out the same year as Warhorse, and he does this a lot. I've noticed he'll
Oh,
do like two movies a year, like Schindler's List and Jurassic Park were the same year.
yeah.
Minority Report and Catch Me If You Can were the same year. It's
Ah,
kind of crazy.
wow.
It kind of doubles
That
up
is,
sometimes.
wow. I don't know
Yeah,
how.
I don't either. It's amazing. All right, jumping into my number four, which is E.T. the Extraterrestrial. This is a 1982 film starring Henry Thomas, Drew Barrymore, Robert McNaughton, Dee Wallace, Peter Coyote. It is written by Melissa Matheson, who did a great job with the screenplay. Had several Oscar nominations: Best Picture, Best Director, Original Screenplay, Cinematography, and Editing. It won for Best Visual Effects, which were groundbreaking. Best Sound Effects Editing, and Best Score by John Williams, which this is one of his most iconic scores
Mhm.
for sure. And it surpassed Star Wars to become the highest grossing film of all time. It's kind of the nice version of an alien invasion movie.
Yeah,
Um, he's done both. Um,
that's true.
and so, this is, first of all, when I rewatched this, I guess I'd never really thought about it, but it's so interesting that E.T. and his species, they're alien botanists.
Hmm.
They're just here to check out our plant life and collect a couple samples and head back home,
Interesting.
It
Yeah.
is interesting that I never really caught that, I guess. I mean, it's very clear from the opening scene, but I thought that was
Every movie where aliens come down, it's like, okay, well, what's their reason for being here, right? That's
right,
what it
exactly.
always hinges on. Are you gonna try to kill us,
Right,
or
right.
are you just getting a couple samples from plants? Hopefully, I'm
Right.
hoping it's that one, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, like I said, these are the nice aliens that just want to check out our plants and then head back home. So just that's just a unique idea. I just thought that was kind
That's a
of
good
cool. I've
point.
never seen that before. So um it really just a great story. I mean, this one is really personal to him. Obviously, it deals with a broken family. The father has left the family, which is what happened with Spielberg. Although later in life, he ended up finding out that it was his mother who had an extramarital affair, and his
Oh,
father decided to take the blame for it, and he left the family, even though
wow.
it was the mom. But um, so, anyways, it's just really well done. Of course, child acting performances, these are some of the best, right up there with
Mm,
what we were mentioning with AI. I think they're just superb.
cool.
Every actor in this is just playing it so naturally.
Mm.
The fact that Drew Barrymore's doing this at, I think she was like 6 at the time or something, is really amazing. They all give such good performances. They're so believable. He also shot it in chronological order so that the children had a
Oh,
better understanding of the story and where they were
oh, that
in the
makes
story.
sense.
Yeah, yeah, I thought that was a really smart idea. Um, and it's just moving and touching. I mean, by the end,
Mm,
you just get choked up. I think every time I watch it, that finale is so well done. When ET leaves, they actually ended up recording the music first. So they had obviously
mm,
shot, well, they shot the film, but before he edited it together or showed John Williams, he said, just we need something emotional for E.T. leaving. Just write something, and then I'll edit to your music, which is very rare. That never happens. It's always put the music to what I've shot. And so they did the opposite here, and it worked exceedingly well. That finale, that the music there is just amazing. It's such a great score. Um, and I always forget E.T.'s a puppet. By the end of the movie, he's just a character. And that's the highest compliment you can give to a character like that. That is just a puppet, an animatronic that they
Was this
created.
Henson that got involved in it?
I think it was Stan Winston, but I'm not
Oh,
positive.
right. That makes sense. Yeah, I
I
know Stan Winston.
think it
He's
was.
legendary too. So
Yeah.
gotcha. Yeah.
So great work on ET. The voice
Yeah.
of ET is an actress named Pat Welsh, who was
Oh.
actually an old radio soap star
Hmm.
back in the early days of film. She was 67 years old when she recorded all the lines for ET.
Really?
She was a
Oh.
chain smoker. That's why she had that very raspy voice, which they barely had to edit digitally or anything. They didn't really have to do anything to it, which is kind of amazing. So
That's funny.
yeah,
Wow.
but she gives a great performance too. I mean, that's really good. So yeah, really fun movie. It's funny, it's emotional, it's just, exciting. It's got a lot of fun visuals. I mean, that iconic moonshot, which is the logo for his company Amblin,
Hmm.
which is, that iconic shot of them on the bike. But
Right.
just a great movie all around. I can watch it all the time and never get tired of it.
Hmm.
It's a fun one. So that one had to be there. It might be his funniest movie too. I'm laughing
Really.
throughout this movie. It's a lot of fun. I just had one question. Is E.T. a Jedi? Because he comes from a different planet. He can move things
Yeah.
with his mind.
Ah.
He can heal people. He can do all these weird things, and he recognizes
Ah.
Yoda on the street during Halloween. So
Ah.
the kid's dressed as Yoda, and he goes home, and
Yeah.
he starts walking towards him. So some people think he might be a Jedi. I don't know.
Interesting. Wow. Wow. That's a good theory. Yeah. And I should be honest. I saw this back in my 20s and didn't like it when I
Okay.
saw it. I
Okay.
think I felt it was a little too schmaltzy at the
Yeah.
time. And
Sure.
I think it wasn't what I was expecting. So I need to give it
Yeah.
another shot. That
You
was
should.
a few years ago.
Watching it
And
with
so
kids is a
yeah.
blast
Okay.
because
Okay.
your kids will get scared. They'll get freaked out. They'll laugh, though. I mean, it's just a fun,
Okay.
you get a lot of
Yeah.
reactions.
I don't remember
Um,
much about it, to be honest. So
okay. Okay. Yeah, I'd be
I need to
interested to get your
rewatch it.
thoughts on it. Yeah, it'd be fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. All right. That was my number four. Bert, what's your number three?
Okay, well, I kind of warned that variety wasn't going to be the biggest deciding factor here.
Sure.
So my number three is Jurassic Park #1.
Oh, great. Okay, cool. Cool.
Yeah,
Great movie.
and another one obviously we talked about on our Jurassic Park podcast.
Sure.
And this is so I'll just say a few brief words. Masterful storytelling,
Yeah.
groundbreaking effects. As I said
Right.
before, essentially launched CG onto the industry, and it became the new standard for thousands of movies and will into the future for sure.
Yep.
And right from that very first scene where they pull up and look at that first dinosaur, it's that feeling of awe that the audience got along with the characters.
Right.
And it just, you could tell that this was something big, literally big, but also just groundbreaking.
Game changer.
And it was
Yeah.
that's a good way to put it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, to do that for an audience is pretty tough,
Yeah.
and terrific acting,
Yeah.
some scares, some comedy, some intense and thrilling action scenes. Another film that I would demo because of the sound effects, and there's
Yeah.
certain set pieces like I mean, it's probably like a 10 or 15-minute scene where the kids are in the car, and the T-Rex first attacks, and he's stepping on the car, and they're,
Right.
that whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that just, it is so intense every single time I've watched it from when it came out until this past year. I mean,
Right.
and there's a few scenes like that in the film
Right.
that are just
Mhm.
really, really, really great
Yeah.
scenes. And so, I mean, I could go on and on about it. Maybe you want to say a couple words about it, but it's just for that type of film. that it's hard to beat it, you know.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a really good one. It's an all-timer for sure because yeah, like you said, it changed everything and they were originally going to do the kind of stop motion thing.
Yeah,
And they
yeah, they
had
tested it and it,
right,
yeah.
right. Yeah, and Dennis, I think it was Phil Tippett who did the stop motion for it, who's great at that, but when Dennis Muren at ILM came in with the CGI, yeah, that changed everything. So, but I'm glad, there's not very many CG effects in the film.
Yeah,
There's only
just
a
some
handful
certain
of
key
shots.
ones.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. A
Well,
lot
and
of it
then
is,
they go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, a lot of it is the animatronic still.
Yes, yeah, yeah,
Yep.
especially for all the close-ups and stuff, and
Right.
those are terrific.
Hmm.
And I don't think we'd really seen beasts up close like that in film, even
Right.
that looked that realistic and felt that real.
Yes. Yes.
How many? I mean, we've seen so many movies that have mediocre to bad CGI that are made even in present day, and this goes all the way back to '93,
Yes. And
and
it
the
holds up.
CGI is essentially flawless. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, so that just shows you how good they can do. If I mean, I'm not trying to blame the animators. I understand they're often under a lot of pressure, especially these days. But
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, they're not given enough time nowadays. I mean, they're just not. They're not given the time, and that's a huge part of it, and a huge part of why we're seeing such kind of mediocre CGI nowadays is because studios just want to crank these movies out, and they just don't give these guys enough time to give it the kind of attention that it needs. So,
right,
yeah, this is still kind of the gold standard, really, for CGI and
yeah,
blending effects, right? And we talk about that a lot.
right,
Is like the importance of
yeah,
having practical and CGI. You don't always need CGI. Sometimes you do,
yeah,
but
yeah.
there's certain things that you can do without it, and whenever you can do it without it, that's what Spielberg
It's usually
does.
better. Yeah,
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 exactly. So
exactly. Yeah, so
good
I had to put
pick.
that pretty high on my
Yep,
list. You know.
absolutely, absolutely. All right, well, we're on to my number three, and my number three is Schindler's List.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
another
Schindler's
heavy one.
List.
Yeah.
Yeah, it came out in '93, same year as Jurassic. So he's told the story often where he finished shooting Jurassic Park, and then he's shooting Schindler's List over in Europe, and he's still getting the dailies from Jurassic to have to edit and kind of confirm or CGI, confirming all the dinosaurs while he's working on this super heavy Holocaust film. It's like he said he'll never do it again because it was just two totally different things that his mind just almost exploded because he just couldn't wrap his head around both,
You know,
which was
that's a good example though of the kind of filmmaker we're talking about here.
yeah,
Like,
right,
I mean, I think any director would kill to have any, you know, movies of that caliber anywhere on their resume,
right.
but both in the same year.
The same year, I
And
know,
and those are just a couple of the several good ones,
right,
or that, you know, several great ones that are at
yeah,
that level. It's
exactly.
just hard to fathom, really. I can think of
Yes,
only Zemeckis with his back-to-back punch, you know, in 2000 with Castaway
sure,
and What Lies Beneath. But
right.
frankly, I mean, you know, these two movies are probably you know, even better than those two,
Yeah,
really. You
yeah,
know,
they are.
back
And
especially
so
back to back. Yeah.
right, right, exactly. So yeah, just incredible work behind the scenes that he did. But this is kind of the pinnacle, I mean, in many ways of his filmography. It's the best of his mature films, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Because he had of course become known for the kind of big budget blockbuster crowd pleaser
Yeah.
kind of films, and his first foray into the kind of more mature filmmaking was The Color Purple in
Oh,
'85, which
sure.
was well received, certainly. And he did Amistad, later,
Yeah.
but yeah, this one coming out in '93 was definitely another kind of game changer for him, personally as a filmmaker and
Hmm.
storyteller. It kind of took things to the next level as far as a kind of change of pace of what people were used to from him. It's based on the 1982 biography called Schindler's Ark
Oh,
by Thomas Keanley. So this is a true story. Oscar Schindler, he was a real person. Um,
Hmm.
and it swept the Academy Awards, won Best Picture, Best Director, Adapted Screenplay, Cinematography, Editing, Art Direction, and Score. Was nominated for Best Actor, Liam Neeson, Best Supporting Actor, Ray Fiennes, Best Makeup, Best Sound, Best Costume Design. So
Wow.
just widely recognized as a great film,
Yeah.
kind of world renowned. It's his first collaboration with Janusz Kaminski. So this is where they started their
Ah.
relationship, working together, and they
And
just
the
did
other
a.
thing, the entire thing is in black and white, right?
That's correct. Yeah, that's what I was just
Yeah.
about to
Yeah.
mention. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah, he did it all in black and white,
Hmm.
which is so intentional, right? I mean, that's this whole story. It's a black and white issue. It's not
Hmm.
there's no kind of gray area here. It's like here's what happened. It was obviously
Yeah.
wrong, and we need to make sure it never happens again. And that was
Yeah.
his kind of whole goal with the film. There's a splash of
Yeah.
color on the girl's red jacket.
Oh.
So there's a little girl that Schindler sees, and she has a huge impact on him and his kind of journey going forward throughout the story.
Ah.
And so they used that very specifically and very impactfully. Only had a $22 million budget, so fairly modest for this part in his career. But it's an epic film. I mean, it is 3 hours and 15 minutes. It is deep. It is
Yeah.
character centric. It's got, kind of documentary style feel. It feels very gritty and real.
Hmm.
And it's just super, super well done. Movies like this get made, based on a true story of this incredible tragedy that happened, this terrible event that happened in history. And some people can accuse, studios or directors of kind of you're just cashing in on a tragedy. Should you really do that? And some people ask that question sometimes, and they can't really ask that about this because Spielberg gave all of his salary away to Holocaust survivors,
Nice.
which
Yeah.
is incredible.
Nice.
And so that's I've never heard of that happening before, but
Yeah.
that's pretty amazing. And then he started the Shoah Foundation, which started making all these documentaries about these Holocaust survivors, allowed them to tell
Oh,
their story.
nice.
So that's another amazing thing that came out of this film. Just super impactful, powerful imagery. Tells the story very well through the visuals. Stark visuals, just very, very hard to watch. This movie's not an easy one to watch, but
Yeah.
one that I think
Yeah.
everyone should see because it is so important, such an important part of history. I own it. I've only seen it once. My wife has not seen it, so we will be watching it soon, hopefully. But yeah, just a great all-time great film. It's kind of hard to even talk about because it's uh, so powerful, so just impactful and harrowing what happened. And the way he
Yeah.
captured it on film is just really really amazing. So yeah, this one had to be in there for me. It's just kind of on another level in many ways from his other filmography and really stands out. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's my number three.
Yeah. And I did see this way back when it came out.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of those that I just after it's over, you're just like, wow, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously clearly a very well made film.
Right.
I put that up there with Saving Private Ryan of just like, I mean, how
Yeah.
can you say anything bad about the film because it's flawless filmmaking? Just
Exactly.
tough to watch. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, not an easy one to watch for sure. Very
Yeah.
very difficult. But yeah, that was my number three. So let's move on to your number two.
Okay, well, my number two and one are pretty much interchangeable. I almost flipped them, but at this point I've got at number two, Minority Report.
All right, awesome.
Yeah.
Great pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one's good. This one was, like I said, close to making my top five as well.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just got tremendous action, sci-fi, adventure feel to it, while also interestingly later in the film kind of having some really heavy subjects
Yes.
sort of come up. So
Right.
this one's, I mean, as often happens, gets kind of tough to watch at times.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I just want to start by saying that this is one of those films that I don't often notice the lighting, even when it's a Spielberg film.
Hmm.
But this one in particular, I mean, Janusz, I mean, the way
Yeah.
he uses, it's just a master class of
Yep.
lighting in film.
It is.
And um, when you're doing science fiction, you want to take some liberties to set tone. And Janusz, I guess you could say, aggressively use disparities in lighting here.
Yes,
I mean,
definitely.
light, just floods through windows. There's scenes where it looks like it's almost foggy around the characters, but then you realize it's light. It's almost hard to
Right.
describe, but I
Yes.
love that Spielberg, I mean, clearly he must have said, I want you to really make this one feel like a whole otherworldly, look.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll mention something about that briefly because
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
they they really looked at old film noir films, so old movies
Oh,
from that
okay.
genre that were
Mm-hmm.
popular in the 30s and 40s, even into the 50s a little bit, where it was all about kind of shadow and light and
Hmm.
the kind of contrast between the two. And most noir films are detective stories, which this one is as well. So they're very much leaning into that kind of
Gotcha.
genre and
Gotcha.
era, and but doing it in a sci-fi setting, which is
Hmm.
unique. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was all very very intentional by them. Yeah.
Right. Right. And sometimes the look and feel of a film is what makes it, like another example is like The Village. Like without its
Right.
look and art, probably would just be sort of a okay drama,
Right. Right. Sure.
So
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, and that's definitely at play here.
Hmm.
The action scenes in this film, I mean, it's obviously a futuristic film. I love how Spielberg is willing to open up the world to let us see how this how people get around and
Right.
are advertised to, and
Yeah.
and all these interesting
Yeah.
kind of things. And
Right.
this is back before the internet even, but clearly
Hmm.
Spielberg was picking up on the fact that it would be an internet world
Yep.
in the future, which
Yep.
helps. um and then the dark subject matter, not only the loss of a child,
Mhm.
but also the whole debate about um arresting someone before they commit a crime. And
Right.
I actually did talk about this film, I think, back when we did the Tom Cruise podcast.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, I think we talked about this a little bit, so I won't get into it a whole lot, but just that brings up all kinds of debates. And I
Right.
remember at the time when this came out, friends and I would talk about that, and
Yeah.
the morality of it and that kind of thing.
Right,
So
right. Yeah, the whole philosophical debate of, um, the precogs and what they do, and yeah, arresting someone before they've done something, but they're going to
yeah,
do it. That whole conversation. Colin Farrell is great in this. The whole conversation he has with
yes,
Tom Cruise, and when he throws the ball on the table and he catches it, he's like, why'd you catch that? Well, because it was going to fall, but you caught it. So, that's a
yes,
great,
yeah.
it's so kind of mind bending. It kind of hurts your brain if you think about it too hard, but it's interesting.
Yes, yeah, and this is one of those films, and it's been done before, where you've got someone who's an expert in something, and then the
Mhm.
tables get turned, and then suddenly they're sort of the victim of it. Like another
Yeah.
example is The Negotiator with Samuel Jackson, that action film,
Oh,
where
okay.
he's expert hostage negotiator, but
Uh,
something happens, and then he has to take a hostage, and then
oh,
and then the whole movie he's one step ahead of them because he knows stuff. So it's that
right.
kind of film, where
Yeah.
yeah, the main character is always one step ahead of them because he knows what
Yes.
they're gonna what he needs to do to fix everything. So
Yeah.
that makes
Yeah.
for a fun kind of premise.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
um yeah, and one more thing I want to mention about lighting, just to kind of look at it at a different angle, because like I said, we did talk about this one before, but there's a scene near the end between a couple characters, Lara Clark, and the director of the organization, Burgess is his
Yeah.
name.
Max
um
von Sydow's character. Yeah.
yes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's almost a sepia tone that
Right.
is used, and it's just another example of the creative choices. Like I feel some films get stuck in one color palette and that's it, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Like what's the film with Christian Bale we talked about recently, where it's kind of also a cold sort of Equilibrium?
Oh, sure. Right. Right.
Yeah, that one is one palette, right?
Yeah. The whole time. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right.
And so, but it scenes like this with that scene near the end, and the only it's sepia, except the flag itself is black and white, which I found interesting.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
almost like a flip flop of
Right.
using color like used in
Yes.
Schindler's List. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And so, anyway, stuff like that. Those are
Mhm.
just aspects of it. I mean, it's just about as good as it gets action sci-fi wise for
Yep.
me. It's the kind of movie I like. I could probably do without some of the eyeball stuff.
I was just about to
And
say that's the most memorable stuff in the movie for me, but it is
it is.
gross.
It is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, exactly. And there's some nice twists in the film too. Anyway,
Yeah.
great film. So I had to put that up there really high, almost my number one. Could be
Yeah.
interchangeable even. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super good. It's one I've watched a number of times and I always enjoy it. On the most recent rewatch this week, I got to rewatch it and
Mm.
I've heard this criticism. I was kind of looking out for it, and I have to say I kind of agree with it. That's why it
Oh,
got
tell me.
bumped down in my list a little because the film has such a specific tone, right? It's a pretty dark tone, even from the
Yes.
beginning. It's a pretty dark tone, dark
Yeah. Yeah.
looking
Dark
movie,
Society.
the
Yeah.
whole thing,
Yeah.
yeah. And so by the time we get to the end, I feel that the end is a little too happy, a little too
Oh,
optimistic,
gotcha. Yeah.
because everything's tied up with such a nice bow. I mean, the precogs get to live in this nice cottage. Him and his wife get remarried and are having a baby. I mean, it's a little,
Sure.
he takes it a little too far. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering,
Yeah.
there's actually a theory that the whole end of the film didn't happen. Basically, when
Oh,
Anderton goes into when he's captured and he goes into the prison, that's the actual end,
he
and the rest is
stays
what's
in
happening
the.
in his mind.
Yeah. 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 You might have
Yeah,
brought this one up last time
I
too.
might
That
have.
is
I might
very
have.
interesting.
Yeah,
I mean, sure. I guess either way you go,
yeah.
if it helps people with the ending better.
Right, right, right. Which, again, that's
Yeah.
kind of Spielberg's, thing is, he does the kind of more hopeful, optimistic thing, and he's a little more
Sure.
sentimental and
Sure.
kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it fits with him. It just, to me, with the movie, it didn't quite
Yeah.
jive when I watched it this time. But
You're right, because
um,
the movie goes from dark to darker to darker to darker, and then all of a
right.
sudden it's got a nice happy ending, I
Yeah,
guess you could say.
exactly. Yeah.
So sure, yeah,
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
people might not like that.
Right. But still a great film. Still, I like,
Yeah,
one thing I like about it is all the tech, right? And the
yeah, yeah.
police, all the weapons they use, the
Like the
non-lethal
six
weapons,
sticks
the
and
six
yeah,
stick, that little sonic cannon they use, all those kind of
yes, yeah. That thing
little,
is awesome. Yeah, because you
yeah.
feel like it could exist in the future. Like those
Right.
aren't such a stretch.
Yeah, well, Spielberg, he did a lot of research and looked into
Mm,
what kind of weapons are police looking to use. I mean, when this movie
sweet.
was
Yeah.
made, tasers weren't really widely used by
Mm,
police.
yeah.
So he
Yeah.
was looking at those kind of non-lethal weapon. What could they use? What might they be looking into using? So he did a lot
Right.
of research. He
Right.
had a lot of people work on researching that kind of what he wanted it to be a believable future, and he definitely pulled that
Yep.
off.
He does. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Great. All right. I'll move on to my number two, which is Jaws,
Mm,
1975.
hmm.
This is the movie that made Spielberg, basically. This is we just mentioned it on our horror movie podcast, one of my favorite horror
Yeah.
movies of all time. It's based on a 1974 novel by Peter Benchley, who co-wrote the script with Carl Gottlieb. Um, Spielberg, this was his trial by fire. This was a movie that was
Right.
extremely difficult to make. People really didn't make movies on the water because it was so difficult, and he didn't really know that. So he just kind of went out there and said, "I'm going to do it," and found it to be very difficult.
Yeah.
Just maintaining a horizon with the camera, right? I mean, they're on the water, so it's constantly moving. A little
All
motion's
right.
fine,
Yeah.
but you want to keep the horizon and you want to keep actors in frame and just all these things that
Oh
were
man.
so challenging. So
Yeah. Yeah.
the shark didn't work, all that stuff. He
Yeah.
just he
Yeah.
just really went through the ringer on this one. And but look, I mean, it turned out to be one of the best movies ever. I mean, I think this is a really, really great film, and it's
It's a
all
good film. Yeah.
because he really focuses on the characters. You get to
Hmm.
care about these three guys who are all very different, but it takes all three of them to kind of defeat this monster.
Right.
And it's just a great story, great acting by all the actors, and low budget, only $9 million, gross 476 million. So again, the first blockbuster. Just people were around the block lined up to see this every weekend when it came
He
out.
pretty much made it for like there was like no budget. I mean, when you're talking 9 million,
Yeah,
it's like you have
yeah,
no budget.
right.
Like,
Yeah, exactly.
and
Yeah,
then
to
it makes
do it.
that much money. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
I know. To do what they did on this and to only have that much is really amazing. All shot on location in Martha's Vineyard. It's really the popularization of genre filmmaking. It really brought back
Yeah,
that whole
yeah.
kind of interest in that kind of style,
Hmm.
and kicked off the kind of what's referred to as the new Hollywood era, where the kind of old era of, more studio driven, movie star led type films were kind of going away. Throughout the 60s, that was kind of happening. And then in the
Hmm.
70s, when Spielberg, and Lucas and Scorsese, De Palma, Coppola, all these guys that kind of came up together throughout the 70s really kind of bucked the system. And so, this was a big, big movie that did that and made movie goers more interested in the artist behind the camera,
Hmm.
than, who was in front of it. So it really did a lot of things beyond just being such a big, hit financially.
Yeah.
Kind of shook up the whole kind of Hollywood system in an interesting way. And so, people became more interested in different kinds of stories, a kind of grittier style, new techniques, kind of taking bigger risks on different, types of films and filmmakers. So it
Hmm.
had a big impact. Jaws had a huge impact on the industry, and of course on Spielberg and his career. And so yeah, that one had to be in there somewhere. And it's just every time I watch it, I like it more. So it just keeps
Yeah.
going up in my rankings. At my number two now. So yeah,
Gotcha.
that's my number two is Jaws.
Yeah, and I'll just say that I tend to like movies that are in and around water.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's eh, so many films have been made because Jaws came first,
Yeah, right.
and I tend to watch a lot of those, and a lot of them aren't that great, but some of
Right.
them are pretty good, and
Yeah.
it's that extra element of you literally no longer have your footing. And
Yeah.
so you're already at odds with the situation and sort of
Right.
uneasy, and so yeah, it's definitely one of those films that laid a lot of groundwork once again,
Yeah. Yeah,
by
exactly.
Spielberg. So
Right,
yeah,
right, for sure.
just like
Yeah, I've
Raiders
always
did with that
yeah,
genre. You know what I mean?
right, exactly. Yeah, and I've always
Yeah.
kind of been interested in movies on the water too. My a couple of my grandfathers were in the Navy, and so I've
Mhm.
kind of always had an interest in that whole thing. And so yeah, this is one that I've always enjoyed. All right,
Definitely.
now we're on to your number one. So what is it?
Number one is War of the Worlds.
Awesome. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Great.
and yes, I rewatched this one again and just love it. Right from the beginning, Morgan Freeman has that narration, and
Yes.
John Williams, his score is again unlike anything that I've heard from him, and
Yeah.
he really came up with something that puts you makes you kind of unsettled right off the bat,
Hmm.
and tells you, oh, this isn't going to be one of the you know plant exploration alien films.
Right.
And of course,
Exactly.
it's a remake. I still need to watch the original. I know it's a
Yeah,
classic.
it is.
And speaking of films that Spielberg maybe kind of has sort of a quick happy ending, this one gets that
Sure.
saddled with that, but it's probably like the original. I think you may have told me that,
Hmm.
where at the end, spoiler, they just all of a sudden the machines or whatever they are just stop,
Right.
stop working and fall over
Right.
and that kind of thing, or the
Yes.
shields go down.
Right.
Yeah, and Tom Cruise, when he did this, it was during a time when he was not looked upon well in the media. He just had
Yeah.
the fallout with I think it was Nicole Kidman, and so they
Mm.
smartly made him someone who wasn't necessarily like a nice guy or a good dad,
Right.
and
Right.
that really kind
Yeah.
of worked for the film. And I think
Yep.
he's obviously a pretty great actor, so he pulls that off well.
Yep.
The alien stuff, I told you before, this is the only film to have given me nightmares, and it's not
Mm.
necessarily because I was scared while watching it, but just
Right.
very effective.
Yeah.
Definitely created some disturbing imagery in my mind, I
Sure.
think,
Sure.
because at
Yeah.
least
Yeah.
twice I had nightmares, like
Wow.
in weeks later or whatnot,
Yeah.
unexpectedly.
Right.
It's probably the best alien invasion film I've seen.
Hmm.
This isn't the wisecracking lead character. I mean, he does say some funny things, but it's not
Sure.
like Independence Day
Right.
or something like that. This is like, what if
Yes.
it really happened and they
Yeah.
really were here to attack us?
Right.
And This is a film where I actually visited some of the sets, where they
Oh
where
yeah.
they
That's
filmed
right.
Right. I'll have to upload a couple of the photos,
Yeah,
maybe to the Facebook page
yeah,
of photos I took from the set where the tripod first comes out of the ground in Jersey.
right, right.
And so I'll have to attach those on the Facebook page just to
Yeah,
kind of show what it
definitely.
looked like. And in fact, it's everything they used in the film were real places. Like there's like
Yeah.
a realty place, and I think there's
Mm,
like a donut place, and there's definitely this memorable church. Like those are all real
right.
places.
Wow.
And a lot of times with sets, they'll design it, they'll change names and stuff,
Yeah,
but they
sure.
didn't. Like they kept all of the
Mm,
local names, and
that's
I really
cool.
liked that. And when you
Yeah.
visit a place where they film something, it's neat to be able to see all that kind of stuff. So
Yes.
I
Yes.
loved doing that. So
Yeah, that's great.
um anyway, there's obviously a lot more I could say about it.
Mhm.
um does kind of finish a little too neatly,
Mm,
but it doesn't matter because I enjoy the thing, and it is terrifying. It's a terrifying film, and
yeah,
just super well made.
right.
I wouldn't want anybody else to have that kind of budget to make this kind of film,
Yeah.
because it would not look as good as it does,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely.
And
You're totally right.
I have to mention Janus one more time,
Yeah.
how he made those aliens, and I love the fact that they're combination of metal and organics. You know, I mean, they're not.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's so interesting to me.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
what he does with the lighting of the things, because they literally have light come out of their the machines. You know,
Yeah, right.
it is so fascinating with each watch. So once
Yeah.
again, Janus, terrific
I
there as
know.
well. So
Yeah.
just probably I got to say my favorite Spielberg film. If I'm sitting someone down, I'm gonna be like, "Have you seen War of the Worlds?" And they'll be
Right.
like, "Oh yeah, that one from the '60s. Yeah, that's pretty good."
Right. Yeah. No, you should watch the original. It is fun. I
I
got to
need to.
rewatch both actually
Oh,
because
okay.
I got the Criterion the War of the Worlds
Oh,
from
oh,
yeah, the original. So yeah, it was interesting watching them back to back because there's not a ton of similarities, honestly. It's very
oh,
different
really?
story. Yeah.
Oh,
I mean
okay.
it's the basic idea is there, the alien invasion. The tripods, he definitely took inspiration from the original
Oh,
design of those ships, but
okay.
it's not about a dad and his two kids, trying to
Gotcha.
survive this. It's kind of about a
Gotcha.
whole town and how this whole
Yeah.
town is
Yeah.
dealing with it. So yeah, it's quite different in how it feels. But yeah, that original one had groundbreaking effects for the time and
What are
all
they
this
stop
stuff.
motion effects on the original?
Um, I don't know if they used any stop. They probably did use some stop motion on it, I would
Okay.
imagine.
Yeah.
But
I feel like I
yeah,
saw something from that, but maybe not. Yeah.
yeah. It's really well done though. It's a lot of fun to watch.
Hmm.
But yeah, this one, I mean, yeah, on rewatch, it was great. It went up higher in my rankings. Didn't quite make the top five, but was really close. And yeah, it's one of Cruise's best. It's Dakota Fanning. I mean, she's incredible in that as well. And
Hmm.
so yeah, I like the whole story of the kind of absentee father who kind of has to
Yeah.
step up, and it's really
Right.
really well done, just well done on every level. Visuals, the score is great.
Yeah.
Effects, like you said, they're just so seamless. I mean, him running through when that tripod first comes up and starts blasting those people, it's
Yeah.
just so intense, and it just feels
Yeah.
so real. And
And
there's
this
some
came out
just
not too long after 9/11, when you had that
that's
imagery
right,
of people with the dust on their faces.
that's
I mean,
right,
that made it that sort of extra,
definitely,
timely and
yeah.
scary. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely a post 9/11 kind of allegory there, that was really
Yeah.
effective. And there's that great shot of, when they get that van working and escape, of them
Yes.
driving down the highway
Yeah.
and this camera's going
Yeah.
around the van as they're
I was
having this
gonna say
conversation.
that.
It's such a great shot. It's incredible that they achieved that.
Let me tell you, this time I watched the behind the scenes stuff, because I
Mm,
thought maybe they show us how they do that. And they
yeah,
showed at one point a rig that had like a couple cameras like mounted on the outside of the vehicle, but
yeah,
that doesn't explain how the camera goes
right,
from racing
around,
along the side of it to
yeah,
over the hood
yeah,
to around the back, through the back seat,
right.
and back out the other side.
Yeah.
What is going on here?
I don't know. I don't know how
I
they
still,
did
to
that.
this day, I don't know. I mean, to me, it's the most incredible shot
Yeah,
that I've seen Spielberg do, and I
yeah,
can't explain it. I mean, it's
yeah.
probably pretty simple. Actually, I'm sure it wasn't simple,
Yeah,
but
it couldn't have been, but yeah, it's amazing to watch for sure.
yes,
Yeah, and
yeah,
and the thing about when he does shots like that, he's kind of been known for doing oneers like that.
mm,
His usually aren't extremely long or anything, but they're always story driven. It's always him wanting you to be with
yeah,
the characters in this intense moment.
It
And
keeps it intense.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he pulls it off totally there. Just yeah, great film. I don't mind the happy ending there because I think it really tracks with that story. It didn't feel jarring to me. It felt like
Yeah.
it was earned, very
Sure.
much. It was earned.
Yeah.
So
And it kind of
yeah,
makes sense, frankly.
right. I agree. I agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that one works really well for me. Great. All right, great pick for your number one. On to my number one. If you know me, if you know the podcast, if you listen, I think I even said it early in the podcast. My favorite Steven Spielberg film is Raiders of the Lost Ark. So that's my number one, released June 12th, 1981. My favorite movie ever. I mean, this just has everything. This has action, romance, drama, horror, comedy. It's all in there, all done very well. Was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Cinematography, Best Score. It won for art direction, editing, sound editing, and visual effects. It did a great job at the Academy Awards, racked up a lot of nominations and awards there. Like I was just saying, he's always character driven, and I feel like we really get to know who Indiana Jones is
Mhm.
through the action, through the visuals. It's really well done. All the characters are just so much fun. John Rhys Davies as Sala is great. Kind of supporting character. Marion is such a great leading character as well. You have got some great villains. Paul Freeman as Belloc is a lot of fun. Ronald Lacey as Tote, scary and just kind of fun. They're all kind of hamming it up a little because this is harkening back to a kind of 30s era, more serialized adventure story. But it's grounding it a little bit more than it was in those original movies as well. So just does a great job. It's kind of a journey of faith a little bit with Indy, where he's kind of a non-believer at the
Mhm.
beginning, and by the end he definitely
Right.
believes in the power of the arc, and that kind of thing. So it's just a lot of fun. It's super fast paced, really kind of down and dirty style. He had a very low
Yeah, it's
budget,
gritty.
and this was coming off of the aforementioned 1941, which was a huge disaster.
Mm.
That movie flopped big time, and so Spielberg really had something to prove here. And so he wanted to do it on time, on budget. He had gone over time and over budget on all of his other films, especially
Oh,
Jaws, went way over
yeah.
budget, way over schedule. And so this one, he really wanted to prove to the studio that, yes, I can make a good movie that'll make money and I can do it on budget, on time. So he did all those things on this movie. And so it's one of the movies he's most proud of. It's, the character he's returned to most often. Although he doesn't actually look at the other indie movies as sequels, he looks at them as all standalone adventures with the same character, much like James Bond, I think. And that was the original inspiration for this, was James Bond. Like
Ah,
he wanted to
gotcha.
do a James Bond movie, and George Lucas said, "No, I've got a better idea," and so they went
Yeah,
with Indiana
right,
Jones. So
right.
um, just really well done, all shot on location, or mostly on location. Shot a little bit at Elstree Studios in England, but shot in France and Tunisia and in Hawaii for this movie. It's just an example of his how great he is at collaborating. Obviously, John Williams, that iconic score,
Yeah.
the editing with Michael Kahn, again keeping that pacing just breakneck pacing, and it's really well done. Harrison Ford collaborating on the character really helped Spielberg craft who this character was, and he talked about a lot about how he kind of gave him this kind of vulnerability that a lot of action heroes hadn't had at that point, and so that
Mm.
kind of ushered in a new era of a different kind of action hero that we see even today, but with
Yeah,
characters like John McClane from Die Hard, a
right.
character who can actually get beat up and you kind of feel for, you kind of relate to him a little bit more than you
Yeah,
would some kind
yeah.
of superheroic character who can't get hurt and is just invincible. So,
Right.
that's a lot of fun, and that's an important aspect of it as well. So, yeah, all in all, just a great movie all around, a movie I can watch anytime. I've watched innumerable times over the course of my life, and will continue to watch as well because I've got it on 4K now, so it looks really nice.
Nice.
So yeah, that's my number one, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, it's a testament to a film that someone like me can watch it somewhat skeptically in
Sure.
2022 for the
Yeah.
first time, and
Right.
it still is an enjoyable film.
Yeah.
I kind
Yeah.
of wish I would have watched it way back. I'd probably feel it was 5 star. There's a lot of I think nostalgia components to it. I will
Sure.
say I didn't like the sequel as much. I watched that
Yeah,
also
Temple
for
of
the first
Doom.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I might like it more the second time, but I just was
right.
not really digging it as much. No pun
Yeah.
intended. Yeah.
Yeah, no, no, a lot of people don't care for Temple of Doom as much. Have you seen Last Crusade?
Oh yeah, that one I
Yeah,
watched a
people
few
like
times
that one a
back.
lot
Yeah.
more. Yeah, yeah,
Yes. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed that one. Uh-huh.
yeah, yeah, that one's fun.
Yeah.
Great. All right, well, that is it for our top five Spielberg movies. Prolific director, super talented, just incredible, incredible filmmaker, that has had such a long career and been able to do so many different things and been able to tell real human stories about, who we are and or a lot of his movies, I mean, all of his movies are very personal to him, obviously. Some directly tie in to who he is as a person. And really, really impactful, really amazing. He's done a lot of
Hmm.
historical films, a lot of fantastical films as well, and so he's kind of had a wide array of different types of movies. So there's something for everybody there, like you said, Bert, at the beginning. I think anyone can find a Spielberg movie that they will like. And so we just wanted to talk about him. His new movie, The Fablemans, is in theaters, limited release. Haven't been able to see it yet, but can't wait to watch it when it does become available. So let us know your favorite Spielberg movies in the comments below. We want to hear from you as well. Be sure to leave a like, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell below to get notifications of all our videos. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for being with me again, Bert.
Of course. Yep, it was fun.
Absolutely. Thanks again for joining us. We will see you next time right here on The Real World.